So now as we proceed, following up after the death of Nightwing, to which we've come to find out that that's the death of his identity rather than his actual body. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch us spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so following up with our talks about the death of Nightwing, in this video I want to get more into what that actually means and really dig deeper into where Dick Grayson is mentally, spiritually, and physically. And we're going to jump around a bit between those three. I'll also touch on a bit where he's at emotionally, and there's only like one thing that pulls on him as far as that goes, but I'm more so going to put that together with the mental, because at this point in time, he's really in a place of just figuring out what he wants to attach himself to. But before we get into that, just on a broader scope, right now, Batman is aware of Dick's condition, and as for him, like we talked about in the previous video, he's already taken care of KG Beast, and moving forward, he is on the hunt to find who put out that hit on Nightwing. And I have my suspicions of people like Simon Hurt, for example, who's supposed to be dead, being that he was supposedly killed by the Joker, he was supposedly killed in the Convergence, but as for right now, he's really at the top of my list. And if you guys want, we can explore that a lot more in another video, kind of like we did for Who's in the Chair on the Dark Knight's Metal playlist. But he's at the top of my list right now, and it's not just because he shot Nightwing in the head before, and it wasn't with a real bullet, it was just like a pellet, but it hurt like a mug. And his intentions at the time were more so towards the point of doing neurological damage, which gave Batman and Damian Wayne a 12-hour clock. But let me know in the comments if you guys want to open that investigation, and we'll definitely dive deep into that one. But as far as Dick Grayson and where he's at right now, man, it's tough to find a place to start, because this time when he got shot, it changed him. And as far as consciously, he's still there, but the past 15 years of his life, he doesn't really remember. And sure, there are things here or there that he'll come across that'll kind of refresh in his memory, but for him, the past 15 years are pretty much a blank slate. And from time to time, he'll suffer from the symptoms of his injury by having headaches, blackouts, seizures, mood swings, and his coordination is a little inaccurate from time to time. But even with him dealing with all these things, make no mistake, that muscle memory is still there. And one of the first times that we see this is while he's in a diner, and it's really just him and the waitress, but this guy comes in, tries to rob the place, and he takes him down, not trying to be a hero, but just off of sheer instinct and muscle memory. But like I was saying, just think about it, the past 15 years that he does not remember is pretty much his whole career as Robin and as Nightwing. And he currently still stays in Bloodhaven, so from talking to people here and there, he's heard of Batman, he's heard of Nightwing. But at this point, he has no desire to suit back up and start back jumping from rooftop to rooftop. And it's not a thing like, okay, he was shot and he's afraid to be a hero again. But with him refusing to take help from Bruce Wayne, refusing to be Nightwing, he's truly free. His responsibilities and his burdens have been reduced tremendously. And for Dick, this is a fresh start. Not exactly a smooth one, because there's certain times he wakes up and doesn't know where he's at, or he'll doze off and have these crazy dreams, which are actually memories from that 15-year gap coming back. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But in this new life, he's made a number of changes. Like for one, he goes by Rick, and he knows his actual name, like he has his ID and everything. But it's just that now he chooses to go by Rick, or sometimes even Richard, just as a way to switch it up moving forward. And to make money, at first he would do the Fight Club thing or play pool or whatever, but a few months in, he actually got a job being a taxi driver just so he can get some more money on a consistent basis and save up for a place to live. But what's pretty cool about the whole taxi thing, like his cab number is the same as the year of his first appearance in Detective Comics number 38 back in 1940. And I personally just thought that was a nice touch. But getting into some of these dreams and some of the details, which are actually his memories just being restored, and there's even a lot of the time that he'll have the dream, wake up and not necessarily remember what it was, but feel a certain way after coming out of that dream. And a great example, in one of the dreams, it even alludes to some of what we were talking about in the previous video as far as the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson. And it goes back to the first time that they faced the Scarecrow. And we kind of just cut into the middle of their conversation with Batman telling him nobody's gonna be afraid of you. And probably because he's running around here in red, green, and yellow. But this callback really just reminds Grayson of how he would constantly tell Bruce that he doesn't want people to be afraid of him. He wants to do things his own way, and he wants to have his own identity. And coming from this dream, he's not necessarily gonna remember it all entirely, but it does quicken those feelings he's had for so many years as his time as Robin, and him just wanting Bruce to let him be his own man. But also in this dream, when they arrive at Gotham University, which is where Jonathan Crane was previously a psychologist professor before he completely lost it and became the Scarecrow. And at this point, a lot of the Scarecrow's origin is starting off like back when he had first appeared, like in World's Finest. But of course, much like we talked about before, DC Rebirth is going to change a few things, just like with any other time there's a reboot. But I do very much like with this, much like what talks about Marvel Legacy, that they're going back to the core original substance of the character. But this time around, it's like way more brutal, because after getting fired by the school, he has like the staff and everyone's eyes and mouths sewn shut. I don't remember that happening back in the older one, and it's been a while. I could be wrong, I just don't remember seeing that in his original origin, that part specifically. But either way, what Grayson takes away from this, and even going back to the conversation that him and Batman had on the way there, this dream or this flashback, this recall of his memory, just brings back the point of where after Batman had taken off the Scarecrow's mask and given him a taste of his own medicine, that was just a moment for Dick when he realized that, hey, you're not too different from this guy. And he remembers that feeling of at that moment when he was just like, that's not the way that I want to go. And this reminds me, like a couple days ago in the community section, I asked you guys, or I took a survey of who would rather, like just pick one, like who would rather have memory where you would never forget anything ever, or you could just have a regular memory and choose what you want to forget, like just delete it out of your mind. And I gotta say, for me personally, I would choose the option to delete, because there are some things that happen throughout life for everyone. Moments of tragedy, moments of pain, and if you can never lose that thought or that memory, it stays with you always. So for me personally, I would opt to be able to choose to forget. And not a lot of things, just certain things here and there. Really anything that I feel like would slow me down. Because for Richard Grayson, who's just Rick at this point, when he initially came to, he was like, who's Nightwing? And there were a lot of memories that he had to catch up with little by little, but by no means was he in a rush to be like, oh man, I was once this hero, let me figure everything out so I can get back out there. And he doesn't even look at it as far as taking the high road. He just wants to take his own way and figure out how to move forward instead of just trying to restore Dick Grayson all over again. And I'm gonna tell you guys right now, that part of his decision gets complicated in a hurry when he's confronted by Barbara Gordon. And over these past few months, what we come to find out is that she's confronting him a number of times. And really, Bruce and the others have been keeping tabs on him just to make sure he's okay. But in the case of Barbara Gordon, this is different because they've had this off and on relationship for the longest time. And not just in Rebirth, back in New 52, they were close to getting together, but it just didn't quite work out. And I know a lot of the longtime Nightwing fans are just like, that's pretty much all of Dick Grayson's relationships. But going forward in Rebirth with Ben Percy, I'm pretty sure this is the one that's gonna stick. And during Dark Knight's Metal, when Tim Seeley was writing Nightwing, I'm not gonna front, I thought Sean Sang was the one. Like, they're about to start a family and everything. But with Barbara Gordon and probably Starfire as a close second. In pre-New 52, I would have switched them around. First Starfire, then Barbara Gordon. But jumping forward to where we're at now in DC Rebirth, if Rick eventually settles down, I have to intentionally call him Rick and not Dick. But if Richard Grayson settles down, it would most likely be with Barbara Gordon. But as of right now, we're quite some way from that happening. And it's because of their long history that Barbara is so adamant about getting him back. And when she walks with him into this bar, and for Grayson, like, this is his spot. As far as step one for his new life, these are the people that he's met, these are his new friends, this is his camaraderie for his new life. But something that's funny, like while they're here having this conversation, she calls him Dick, while all of his friends here are used to calling him Rick. And one of the bartenders is like, hey, what did she just call you? And the crow on his shoulder is like, Dick, Dick, Dick. Which is also some foreshadowing for Scarecrow, because I didn't think crows talk, and if they do, they only say nevermore. But for Rick, the way he brushes off Barbara, it's pretty cold. And through their conversation, we see connections to like the Killing Joke, where he's like, okay, so you got shot, I got shot, we both got over it. Because with everything that she's been trying to tell him and remind him of, like telling him to call her Barbs, but he constantly calls her Barbara, and she refuses to call him Rick. She only addresses him as Dick, because that's what his real family calls him. But with all this effort of trying to get him to come back home, or to come back as far as being the Dick Grayson that we've known for years, it's like all of her efforts have gotten her nothing. No progress, no glimmer of hope. And as much as she wants him to come back, and she even admits that she needs him, as painful as it is to admit, this is something he has to do on his own. And for Barbara, that's like a punch in the gut, because at this point it is starting to sink in that he may never come back. And Batman believes that it's possibly better this way, so that Grayson can have a fresh start and truly live his own life. And Alfred's try to wheel him back in too, but much like Barbara's different attempts, the results were very much the same. But as far as Batman Batman making this comment. It says a lot about where he's at right now. I mean, not long ago he nearly beat Victor Freeze to death, where soon after he had to do jury duty for his trial, and he found himself kind of losing it and doing these crazy things after being left at the altar. So in a way, in his perspective, if Grayson can be happy somehow, some way, and just have a fresh start, perhaps that's a better life for him. But jumping back over to Grayson, I don't want to call him Rick either, you're not alone. But jumping back over to Grayson in Bloodhaven, he goes back to his Nightwing hideout where all his suits and his weapons are, and he burns it to the ground. And his base of operations was like in an abandoned subway tunnel, so it's like a closed off area. He didn't burn down a city block. But when he does this and leaves, it does get the attention of the local authorities because of course where there's smoke, there's fire. And so when the Bloodhaven Fire Department comes to check it out and the police come and the detectives come in, start investigating, when they discover that this is Nightwing's hideout, this immediately gets the attention of Detective Sapienza, which I'm pretty sure is Italian, Sapienza, and not Greek, Sophia, because they're both pretty much spelled the same way. And when he discovers these suits in a blood-free crime scene that has no sign of obvious struggle, and he puts that together with the fact that Nightwing has been missing for months, and it's not like he was killed in action because the suit's still here, there's no sign of forced entry like somebody broke in. So for these reasons, he pretty much puts everything together and figures out that all of these things are just signs of neglect. And as a detective who sees the police working overtime, and even then they can barely keep up, but because of this he believes that Bloodhaven needs a Nightwing. And to quote John Stuart Mill, Sapienza believes that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for the good men to do nothing. And he's come to the conclusion that that's what the real Nightwing is doing. Granted, he has no idea who the real Nightwing is and what exactly he's going through at this moment, but what he does see is a city that is suffering because no one has donned the mantle. And it's for this reason that he takes it upon himself to become the new Nightwing. Because as a detective who's bound by the law, he can only do so much. But as Nightwing, and possibly with others joining to his cause, Bloodhaven can finally have the hero or heroes that it needs. And I gotta say, the first thing I was thinking when I seen this was like, I could just pretty much imagine him having a conversation with Dick, and Dick just saying like, hey man, just it's overrated or something to that nature. But another thing that I wanted to mention is like, with the past 15 years being lost from his memory, he still remembers his childhood. He still remembers the circus, his family, and at this point, that's one of the only few things that's pulling him in any direction. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Where do you think this is going for Richard Grayson? Will the new Nightwing thing last? Will Dick Grayson become something else for a while and come back? Let me know what you think, because to be honest, that's kind of where I'm leaning right now. But let me know down in the comments, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.